There we go. We got our first technical difficulty out of the way.
We both were muted by the.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it when we play that introduction, it starts us off with both muted, so we're not talking over that. So, well, welcome. Um,
Excellent. Good to see you, Nick.
yeah, good to see you too. It's we finally put this together. I think we talked about it since December.
Yeah.
Um, I think there was the romanticizing of it. Let's do a fireside chat with our favorite holiday beverage and talk about the work. So
Neither one of us has a fire by our side at this precise moment.
yeah, that's true. I could probably put one on my screen here and
Oh,
get that
okay.
get that ambiance. Well, yeah. So it's good to see you face to face. As good as it
Absolutely.
gets in 2024, right? So
Yes.
all right. So for anybody viewing us for the first time, I'll just start with some basic introductions. My name is Nic Davis. I am a narrator. That's aspiring narrator. That's my nighttime work, but nurse by day, and I work for the VA, and had the opportunity to work on a narration project here for John Hughes, the author of Heart Like a Bonfire. I think I might have pulled a copy out of it. Here we go. Yeah, look at that. There we go.
Beautiful.
And so yeah, I'll let John you give us your introduction.
I have no clue who I am, Nick. That's been my question I've been asking myself for 50 years. But by day, I function as John Hughes, hospice chaplain, and author of this book, Heart Like a
Awesome.
Bonfire, and meditator and walker.
And meditator and walker. Where do you walk every day?
Most days, yeah.
Yeah.
Just in my neighborhood. Sometimes I get over to a nature preserve near me, which
Oh,
is in
okay.
the book. I'm going to walk
Yeah.
in the nature preserve at one point in the book.
Nice.
You
Now,
walk?
do you so you when you say meditating, do you do them simultaneously, or is this dual practice? Kind of a your morning routine. Do meditation? Do walk? How do you start that out?
Yeah. I meditate formally on a meditation cushion in the evening, by my, for an hour, close to an hour, depending on how my back's feeling. The walk is meditative. It's not formal meditation, but it is. I'm paying attention to sounds and ambiance around me very closely,
Ah,
and
yeah.
also to um, my feet touching the ground. I'm just being mindful of my feet touching the ground and of the sound around me, and also paying attention to potentially being hit by a car. I want to avoid that.
Yeah.
Glance
Got to watch
into
out for those things.
Yeah, glance into people's houses. I'm not staring in, but as I'm walking past, I glance in and just get a sense of the vibe of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Everybody's watching TV.
That's for sure. Yeah, you can usually see that bay window of some sort above a mantle, and everybody's got a TV mounted on their wall and an eye shot. And like, what football game are
Exactly.
they watching tonight?
Exactly.
Yeah. Um, I it's funny you say that. Uh, we'll take our first tangent here. Um, Noticing exercise. That's what that reminds me of.
Oh yeah.
In therapy circles, that's a good noticing exercise. I've done that myself, and I've my daughter who struggles with anxiety. I've definitely kind of coached her and talked to her about that. Just name something you see, name something you hear, name something you feel, and kind of repeat that as you just look around at your surroundings, and it really um, quells those anxious feelings and thoughts. So
For
um,
sure. That's
yeah,
beautiful.
yeah. So let's talk about the book.
Right. Got me some
Yeah,
great questions.
yeah. I did. I had some questions that I really wanted to just have you thinking about, have us think about. So I'll just kind of, start with the one that's the most obvious. I think. What inspired you to write Heart Like a Bonfire?
Well, Nick, um, On my Facebook page for the last 14 years, I've been sharing little anecdotes. You got to cover patients up. You can't give away their identity. So I've been obscuring them by, changing their age or changing their gender or their race. But I've been sharing about patients and funny things and cute things and profound things that they say. And I've got, uh, usually when I do that, I get about 40 to 50 people pressing like on that.
Mm,
It's a real popular thing. People love to hear the stories. And they often said, you should write a book.
yeah.
Um, and I retired on August 31st of 2022. I'm back at it, but I had about 8 or 9 months off. And on the first or second day that I was off, I was like, what am I going to do now? And the clear answer was write a book about what I've just done.
Yeah.
3,300 um, 3,300 deaths. And, a big thing to me that it's a motive in the back of my mind is that um, I see America, I don't want to get too political, but I do see America trending towards fascism.
Hmm.
Um, they're just, I'll just put it that way. And fascism to me is dehumanization of people.
Yeah.
And I decided that my contribution to countering that trend is to write this book.
Okay.
So I just had a profound connection with it. I think people need help with grieving. They don't know how to grieve. I think that we are grief illiterate in our country, mainly. I hear that all the time when I talk to patients and their families. Well, I don't want to wallow in grief, is what I hear. And I'm like, oh, you don't want to wallow, but does that mean you don't want to feel it at all?
Mm,
Um, well, no, I don't want to wallow. And he would want me to be happy today. He
right.
wouldn't want you to grieve you at all. I sense that. So I was just compelled to speak out. I have a
Mhm.
story to tell. People respond to it well, and I knew I could write a good book that would be a contribution to our culture.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, I found, judge a book by its cover, and I'm just like, well, what's Heart Like a Bonfire? What is this? There's a lot of flames. Like, am I getting into, you know, is this a fantasy book here? Is this, some fiction? Then I'm looking at the synopsis of it, and I'm like, well, is this a memoir? Are we looking at self help, spirituality? Where's this going? And so it definitely leaves a little bit to the mind. So for the curious, you pick it up, and like, okay, this is not what I thought it was. So how do you categorize your book? What is it to you? What's your audience? Who did you target and hope would pick it up?
Right. It is fiction based on a non-fictional substrate. There is element of self-help involved. There's also spirituality light, Lite,
Yeah.
in it. Um, so all those things are mixed in. I had a hard time when I was trying to get it to an agent categorizing it. They say what is your book, and they give you a drop down list, literally.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you have to put a selection in, and I'm like, oh my goodness. Well, literature. I put it under literature.
Yeah, I know. Well, I feel like I should know more about what is literature because there's a category just
Yeah,
for it. I thought this is all literature. Uh,
right. Well, I
yeah.
thought they kind of meant, in the '80s, I read a lot of contemporary novels, so I thought, man,
Uh-huh.
this kind of fits into that the best of. Now, who would read it?
Well, who do you hope picks it up?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Um, People who are going through and have gone through a loss is who I'm primarily hoping. I get a message about once a month from somebody saying, "Oh, I've been through a terrible loss and I've read your book and it's really powerful to me." A good friend of mine just lost his wife,
Mhm.
and we spoke on the phone, and he said, "Oh, I've got to read this book."
Yeah.
He ordered it immediately when I told. He didn't know that I had the book out. We were good friends, but we hadn't uh, spoken in about 20 years, just because you know how it is with friendships.
Right.
Sometimes you just kind of there's a lot of friends to keep in contact with. Um, People who have gone through loss are going through loss, and also people who are anticipating loss.
Yeah.
You know, somebody, your parent turns 78. Maybe this book would be of use to you as you're kind of bracing yourself for what you're going to endure.
Yeah.
You know, um,
Mm.
so that it's a broad spectrum of people that I think. I also think my own orientation towards life is what I call progressive spirituality,
Mhm.
post traditional and progressive spirituality, and so I think that there's a body of people who are going to read it for that sake
Yeah.
too. Yeah,
Yeah. As I think about that, there's what I was pleasantly surprised by in reading through Heart Like a Bonfire was um, the chaplain, Richard,
yeah,
and uh, how my preconceived notions of a chaplain. And now, mind you, I'm a nurse. I work in hospitals, and I've met, like you, very progressive Christian mindsets that are that host, you know, tea for the soul sessions with nurses in their break rooms, and you know,
oh yeah,
it can be very impactful, and yet I've had some great conversations with these chaplains, and they're not centered around the dogmatic, typical
right,
Christian preaching of sorts, and so. But then at the other hand, I think, oh well, there's a reverend. This person's, are they really conservative, and what's their stance on things of the LGBTQ community, and
right,
where do they lie in this spectrum. And I think that just like when we think of death, dying, hospice too, these are all this amalgam of sensitive topics from religion and faith, and death and dying, but yet as I read your book, I was like, this is genius. You make it so relatable, that easily. I mean, I'm in my 40s. I'm a younger generation, and it really connected with me too.
beautiful.
Yeah. So I thought, gosh, people need to know that this isn't just a story that is dealing with these sensitive topics, but it's also, like you said, humanizing. I think I love how you started that off. And to me, this book, and whether you read it or listen to it, is for all humans. If you break it down to it, the humanizing component of it, and the way in which we normalize things in our society right now, from mental health to death, dying, grieving, and different where you fit on a path of your spirituality, whether you're Buddhist or a devout Catholic. And I know you touch on a couple of characters in the story that
Yeah, right,
battle with their identity and faith, to
right.
put it simply. Yeah. So how did you navigate that? What was going through your mind?
First off, by the time somebody becomes a trained chaplain, they've gone through what's called clinical pastoral education, um, where they have to, you're drilled and grilled pretty rigorously to train you to be a good chaplain. And a good chaplain is a person who is self-aware and also is open to um, a great variety of people with curiosity. Um, Also, you're thinking about what's the way in with this person.
Mm.
So all those things are present for most trained chaplains, you know. And then not you, I uh, just take my personal growth seriously, you know. But I think also just my innate personality. I was never a stiff priest or clergy person. I was always felt free to be who I was, just
Yeah.
probably because of my upbringing.
And now tell me about that. Were you is your upbringing there in Wisconsin, or where
Yes,
did you come from?
yes.
Okay.
I grew up in Wisconsin, and my parents were very, very conservative, and I embraced a conservative mindset until I got to college.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I got loose, and I enjoyed life quite a bit. Um, and it impacted my collegiate experience at the University of Wisconsin, impacted my political orientation as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, the funny thing about my conservative upbringing, my dad, gentle, kind man, very loving, very funny. He would always say that he was a conservative and he voted Republican and all this. But when you'd ask him about political issues, he would always express a very compassionate and kind take on a subject, on a question. And I'm like, Dad, you're talking like the Democrats talk and not like the Republicans do. No, that's not true. That's not true. I'd be like, yes, it is. But then what
Yeah.
happened too, Nick, is I went to a conservative theological seminary, and I out in Boston, and I signed up to be the courier, or the guy that picked up speakers from the airport
Okay.
and drove them north to where the seminary was. So it was famous evangelicals. It was about a dozen of them, and I picked them up and drove them. Uh, and I talked to them, and I realized I'm not an evangelical.
Mm.
I am not with these people. That was
Yeah.
really quite a thing. There was one guy, I can't even remember his name, but he was really great. And there was like 11 guys who I was like, these people, like the Edwin Meese and Donald Regan, those are Reagan people uh,
Mm.
of spirituality. I don't want to have anything to do with this. Um, then I started working at the Boston Globe, and I was talking to some people, and I found myself being very guarded about them getting to know me. And then I thought, why am I being so guarded? Because then they'll find out that I believe a bunch of stupid stuff. And then
Mm.
I thought, well, if I think it's stupid, then I don't really believe it. And it was like I had a moment of realization that I was free.
Yeah.
Very beautiful, free to be myself. And I've leaned on that ever since. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. No, that's good. Did it get you in trouble with them once you leaned into it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Because on graduation day, or the weeks leading up to it, they said, "What have you learned during your 3 years in theological seminary?" And I literally, for publication in the school paper, I said, "I learned that evangelicals are sexist, racist, and homophobic."
Oh. So you
And
leaned in. You
that
leaned
didn't
into
fly
it
very
pretty
well.
far.
What'd you say?
Oh, you leaned into it pretty far there.
Yeah, I did. I did, and that didn't go over very well at
Yeah.
the commencement ceremony. I was like, "I'm free though. I'm free. It doesn't matter what you think."
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
So
and you're still doing the spiritual work,
yeah,
maybe
it's just
not
an
in their
ongoing
box. Yeah.
it's an ongoing journey of self-awareness and spiritual discipline, um, that leads to wanting to make a contribution to our culture.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Um, well, gosh. So kind of woof, where we go. Went down a journey there. Um, so in sort of developing this story, and you'd mentioned you really took from what sounds like recent events going into 2022,
Yeah,
recent patient experiences. So these aren't necessarily from, this one's from 2007 and this one's from, 5 years later or whatever. This was kind of a reflection, a capture of a small time frame before you retire your first retirement. Is that right?
that's
Okay.
correct, except for the one guy that died in the back of the ambulance.
Yeah.
That was a long time ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, and without, for people who haven't read it, I don't want to spoil too much, but there's that scenario is really interesting because now that you say that it was from a long time ago, it also brings up the fentanyl issues of today,
Yes,
of people's fear of fentanyl. And you and I both work in professions which, fentanyl it can be a miracle for people, and very important in care, compassionate care, and at that. But yet, obviously, there's a huge uh, stigma with fentanyl in the
that's
streets
right.
now, and addiction, and people being poisoned by fentanyl. So,
Yes,
did you pull from today's climate of fentanyl epidemic with
yes,
with that story come out? Okay, interesting.
yeah, yeah.
So, yeah.
The story. All these patients are, um, with the exception of Benjamin,
Hmm.
are real people. It's usually two people mixed together because I
Okay.
don't want to have a straight story about a patient that might read the book and recognize himself
Yeah.
and be
Yeah.
offended by me using their life.
Hmm.
So
Or a friend,
I
family members.
blended people together, and
Okay.
I also obscured who they were, changed around things.
Yeah.
Age often.
Okay. Well, speaking of Benjamin,
And so I just want to say, and so with that story, the fentanyl, uh, there's a different son. It wasn't the son of that patient who was obsessed with the fentanyl issue. So
oh,
I told two stories,
gotcha.
two
Okay.
patient stories, and the fentanyl issue was relatively more recent.
Okay. That makes sense. Well, I mean, I couldn't tell, obviously, reading it, it seemed like a very, it was really touching. I mean,
Yes,
obviously, to see the care of that son's concern, and there's obviously, I love the way that you kind of brought that back around to,
yeah,
really. And again, I say this without trying to spoil anything, but the growth of the people and especially the family members in these stories, um, I think that really speaks to the testament of you and the team that you work with as far as kind of shepherding these people through that grief, and moving towards acceptance. I don't want to say acceptance because I don't know if it ever gets accepted, right? And
right.
you know,
Yes, right.
yeah.
True.
So, um,
Benjamin, you're going to ask me a question
I was
about
going to ask you
Benjamin.
about Benjamin. Yeah. So, what a character.
Yeah,
Uh, and no surprise to anybody, they can hear it in the audiobook sample that's available. The first chapter, like you really get to introduce to this guy. I mean, he's a smoking, you know, uh, beer, whiskey drinking, Brewers fan. And, he likes the finer things in life. And he has his waitress partner, his,
yeah.
his queen.
Mabel.
Yeah. And, enjoys just being free, a free spirited dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how much of that was you versus a personality which you um, had the beauty of working with?
That's a really great question. Um, it was a combination. I'll say 33% that is me. 33% it's friends and people who are not in hospice, and
Hmm.
33% some guys that I was with as they were dying.
Yeah.
It
Okay.
was a hodgepodge.
Uh huh.
The
Okay.
chaplain is purely me.
Yeah. Well, and that was one of my other things I wanted to talk about with you was so this chaplain Richard. How much? I mean, where is Chaplain Richard and where's John Hughes? Are they?
100% the same.
Yeah.
100% the same.
Yeah.
See, Nick, the way I wrote this was I would get up in the morning and sit down and put my hands on the computer, and the patients would start talking. I
Yeah.
did not make up anything
Yeah.
in the sense of me thinking, now what does this person say next? It just flowed out of me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, you know, talking like myself, uh, it was very easy, as it was with to be any of these patients. One
Yeah.
thing that is true is that in the training that I mentioned before, the clinical pastoral education of a chaplain,
Hmm.
we have a thing called a verbatim, which is a verbatim report of an encounter with a patient.
Okay.
You write out exactly what was said by the patient and by the chaplain, and if
Mm.
anybody else enters into the picture.
Okay.
You write it out, and then you reflect on it in your paper that you turn in, and then you and all the other student chaplains and your instructor go through uh, the conversation, and you basically psychoanalyze the chaplain.
Mm.
So I got the ability to write down from that the ability to write down conversation with a patient, what was said, and then also the inner workings of the chaplain as he's driving to the um, or driving to or from the encounter, and he's thinking about, am I judging these people for being different from me?
Mm.
How do I feel about death today? My own personal death,
Right.
that sort of thing. That's
Okay.
all stuff that we deal with uh, in a community of fellow chaplains.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Um, Now, in developing Benjamin and Mabel's story, um, I really appreciated, and not just with their story, but all of them, but especially in describing their story, their living conditions, the way they, uh, if everything from the appearance of their apartment building on the way in to the way they answer the door, the smells, the visuals, and even even the things around their room that they just didn't care whether you saw.
Right.
There was some interesting paraphernalia
Right.
that was just like haphazardly strewn about.
Right.
um, how much of that is you said it's an amalgamation of many stories. Now, did you take pieces of many in that case of like, hey, I saw this when I went into this patient's home today, and boy, would you believe the smell or this when I went here today. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. What's
Oh my goodness. The smell is an issue, and all hospice workers have to deal with it. And but the page the aide putting mint in her mouth and
uh-huh.
sucking on it and breathing it to cope.
Yeah.
That's a common practice.
Uh-huh. And
There's facilities that are just really bad.
yeah.
I was in one this week. and it's just like, ay, ay, ay. And then people who are who aren't cleaning up
Mm.
for hospice visitors, that's the majority.
Yeah, I imagine that's a tough one because it's very it's a violation of your senses and really puts you out of place, and can be
Yeah.
distracting. But at the same time, you're working from a place of good and compassion, and you're like, okay, well, if it's a home, they've got a lot on their plate. That's the first thing that comes to my mind is there's a lot on their plate. And then there's the other part of me that says, yeah, there probably wouldn't be much different if they didn't have a lot on their plate. So, trying to figure out how much of this is what you're enduring because of the stress and the grief or anticipatory grief of your loved one in this part of their journey. There's a part of what's baseline filled and what's additional, because of what they're struggling with. So,
Right. And, sometimes you can view it as an act of hostility, um,
mm,
that they, uh, I mean, I definitely get hostility from people.
yeah,
But I've been in this long enough that I just noticed, yeah, you probably got to express some hostility. So I just kind of, it means absolutely nothing to me to experience hostility from people at this point in my career.
yeah,
Um, I'm just like, yeah, okay, you flash some hostility. I'll flash some hostility back at you if you really want. And then we'll proceed because, that's really not hostility at me is not the issue. You're
yeah,
dying, So, um, somebody's decorations in their house or lack of decorations or lack of cleanliness, at this point in my career, it means nothing to me,
yeah,
you know. Um, I'm here to show them compassion and to be as helpful to them as possible.
hmm,
And so um, that's what I do,
yeah, yeah, absolutely,
regardless of what I'm looking at.
right. And as you go through, everybody learns to um, mitigate those things with, like you said, the mint. I know, not going into folks' homes, but as a nurse, we definitely, had our scenarios of using the peppermint oil in our mask and going into a room and things like that, when you're doing wound care or that sort of
Oh,
stuff. So
yeah.
yeah, it's
Oh, my gosh.
the tips of the trade. So yeah, well, it's I mean, gosh, I think I said this before. And I've seen a lot and been around a lot in the hospitals and nursing, but you've hospice folks that go into the homes and in these incredibly tough situations. You're saints in my book. I couldn't do it. I say that I couldn't do it. I suppose if it called to me one day and I just normalized it and become adjusted to it, I could. But um, yeah, no, taking that first step is not in my not in my comfort zone to
Well,
begin with. So,
the people who I couldn't do their job are the aides.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, they're
yeah,
changing diapers all day long. I mean, that's just tough. Being a real strong person in my book.
yeah. Well, and speaking of A's, you have a colleague in the book, Mona, who's an aide, and wow, I mean, she really gets to know and really becomes family, with some of these patients, even the ones that are buttheads.
Yeah,
And gosh, I mean, what do you? Because as a chaplain, I noticed that you really pointed out kind of being there, for your colleagues in these difficult
yeah.
situations too. So it's not just that you're going in and working with
Oh
the
yeah, it's working
patients.
as a team.
Yeah, you're using your service, your abilities, your talent, and heart to care for those people on your team too. Um, so how do how do you deal with that? How do you continue to do it and combat the burnout of it?
Yeah. First off, I got to tell you something kind of.
Oh, I don't know if
Uh,
it's mine or your. We're losing a little bit of connection. I'm not sure.
can you
There we
hear me?
go. Yep, I can hear you
Okay.
now.
The
Got a
person
little muffler.
that is based on, and I talk in the book about her potentially being fired if she. As I was writing the book, she was fired
Oh,
without
no.
me knowing about it.
Oh,
Yeah, but she was close enough to retirement that she was able to just walk to the shore rather than swimming.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
so she was fine. But your question is, how do I maintain? Could you restate the
Oh,
question?
I was talking about your own sort of resilience with that, coping with the stress and anxiety of doing that repetitively for families, for patients, and then your colleagues too, as well. Um, what keeps you doing it? What keeps you fresh? Kind of combating that burnout of it.
Yeah, meditation.
Yeah.
Meditation, 100%. I think you also have to do some degree of exercise. You know, the mind body embodiment thing is connected, and I do yoga too. So,
Mhm.
and I have when I walk out of the last patient of the day, I am completely done with work.
Mm.
I mean, I don't even think about my patients as I'm driving home. That might sound cold, but it's how you
Yeah.
survive. I have a great home life, my great relationship with Mary, my cats. You know, I have wonderful daughters. I have wonderful grandchildren. I have a couple wonderful friends and a great brother. You know, it's uh, having a life. You know, as well as staying hydrated and getting my sleep, that sort of thing,
Yeah.
is how you do it. But also, you just have to kind of like your colleagues. You know,
Hmm.
it's that's a big part of it. And seeing humor, um, I have liked 99% of my colleagues through the years. When I see them, I'm happy to see them.
Yeah.
You know, so you're motivated to. I should say, I am motivated to be supportive to them
Hmm.
and be a good team. I know what it's like to work on a good team. I know what it's like to work on a mediocre team. I much prefer working on a good team,
Yeah.
you know, so I do what I can, you know, to make it a good team, make
Yeah.
a good contribution, you know.
Absolutely.
Nurses are wonderful, you know, in
Yeah.
my opinion. Easy to work with, you know. I
Yeah.
find them to be.
Yeah.
What do you
Um,
think? How
what
do you think being
what
being a
I
nurse?
you know yeah, I think a lot of self-care.
Yeah.
Whatever that looks like for you. Um, for me, um, it's family. It's doing stuff with my kids. What do I
Yes.
do? What do I do all this for? What's
Yeah.
the balance? Yeah. No, I always felt a calling to the helping professions in general. Just um, maybe it definitely serves me in some way, a fulfillment, of a purpose, and that's important. But so there's that part. This is hard. I do this because it's rewarding, it's fulfilling, it's important. It's I've done other careers and other things, and if it doesn't have that, doesn't feel significant, doesn't feel like it gives me that purpose, that fulfillment, then it's hard to stick with it. Um,
Right.
So that's a big part of it. But you can still get burned out, of course.
Yes,
Yeah, doing stuff with my kids.
it's
You know,
such a refresher.
yeah, that's
And I'll
for
tell you, Nick, I hired you as my narrator. I took 4 auditions. You know, one guy I didn't hire because he had a thick Southern accent, and it didn't work for the book. Another guy, uh, not competent in reading. He just had difficulty in words. And the third guy was kind of bullying me before he even turned in the narration, the audition. You, on the other hand, sent me a very sensitive note, a friendly note. You'd read the book, or at least part of it, and responded openly and warmly. And I decided I was going to hire you as long as you had a decent audition. Just because of your personality, your character, and you turned in a great audition. So I hired you. So I can imagine you being a really wonderful nurse.
Thank you. I
Yeah,
appreciate
you're welcome.
that. Yeah. No, and we talked about this a little bit. To me, connecting with what is the subject, and if I also, I mean, if I can connect with it, if it makes me feel comfortable, confident in an ability to deliver it, then yeah, I want to do it. And if on top of that, it's meaningful, this is a privilege to do something like this, um, where the stakes are high and important. This is important subject matter. This is, and then I told you this before, but entertaining. Like I was genuinely entertained by your writing, your ability to tell these
Yeah,
stories. Um, and I feel, and a part of me is like, ooh, but this is, you're not supposed to be entertained and you're not supposed to laugh. Like this is hospice we're talking about, this is death, dying, grieving. Um, but that's really what I loved about your writing of this book was it it was really impactful at the same time, relatable, humorous, all those things. And my favorite part, or my way of coping with grief and difficult stuff, is humor and laughing. And so I think you probably share similar sentiments in that regard. But there's the beauty and the wonderment of people and humanization of things. And yeah, it makes you smile, it makes you laugh. And yes, there are painful, hard moments that make you want to cry.
yeah,
um,
that's a great thing about it.
yeah, I think I
Mixture.
told I think I told you that this came for me
Yeah.
at a time, like I literally auditioned and then you and I met to say we're going to do it, and we're moving forward that weekend. And a good friend of mine, a college buddy, he'd been on hospice all summer long, kind of missed out on some of our big group get-togethers. He had renal cell cancer, and he passed away on Labor Day,
Mm,
after a long
mm,
battle with that. And yeah,
mm.
and it definitely, was a rough time in my life just in general with other things going on. But
Yeah,
and there's a part of me like, can I do this? Should I do this?
yeah,
I don't want to let this guy down. Like, I can feel the procrastination bug, peeking in here. Um, and there was all of that. And then I just thought, no, like this was destined. This was just meant to be. Like, this is
beautiful.
part of it. So um and I, at one point, I just had to tell you, I was like, hey man, here's what I'm going through. And it was funny because I sort of worried about it. I was like, why am I worrying about this? This guy works in this industry. If there's anybody who's ever going to be understanding and then project
Right.
work with the author, it's going to be
Yeah,
John. Like, so I just had to get out of my head about that, and stop being silly and be like, hey man, it's been rough. Like,
yeah,
I really want to do this more than ever because something tells me I need to read your book on a personal level. So,
yeah.
um, and yeah, so
Then
no,
it turned out I was a major jerk about it and was abusive to you.
oh my gosh, not at all, not at all.
Yeah.
I think,
Can I tell you a funny story?
yeah.
You mentioned funny. I don't know how you said that this would go 45 minutes, and we're at 46.
Oh, I said we'll shoot for 45. If we hit an hour, that's great. I think the
Okay.
YouTube
Okay.
algorithm likes that. But yeah.
Cool. Well, here you said that there's humor sometimes in hospice. This is one of my favorite moments. Um, my first hospice that I worked with was on a lot of my work was in a hospice unit. So we had
Okay.
10 beds and 10 rooms on a floor of a retirement home.
Mm.
And I was on call one night, and I was called in about 10:30, 11 at night. Nurses that I knew called, and I said, "We've got a major situation. Please get over here. We've got a guy who they're really fighting. One guy has admitted the patriarch of the family
Mm.
to um, hospice, and the rest of the family thinks that it's premature, that he shouldn't be in hospice, that the guy that admitted them is giving up and basically killing the
Mm.
patriarch. Could you come in? That we fear that there's even a gun involved."
Oh.
So I said, "Yeah, yeah, I'll come in." Not entirely comfortable with the possibility of a gun being involved, but my attitude usually is kind of launch me into the situation, and I'll deal with it once I get there. So I got to the nursing home, and I rounded up two security guards and a janitor. I needed some kind of backup. I said, "Let's the four of us go in there." We went in, and what's going on? And the patient, the family member that didn't want the grandfather into the hospice
Mm.
had pulled the gun, and the guy that had admitted him had run down the hallway and run into another patient's room, a little old granny, 90 years old, and hid underneath her bed. She's lying there watching television, and this guy comes and runs, and he hides under her bed. And so they said, so he's currently lying underneath the patient's bed in room 6.
Oh my.
And so I go, all right. So I go down the hallway, and I look in the room. I don't remember her name, but we'll call her Betty. I say, "Betty," and I hear the guy's voice from underneath the bed. "Yes."
Oh my gosh.
I went in, and the two of them are talking. They had struck up a friendship with him still underneath the bed. Oh my goodness.
Hey, they're that that's their origin story right there. How they cross paths, and
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
it's
And I
funny.
went down and talked to the family, and they had calmed down, and the gun had been put away.
Oh my.
So all was well, but that just struck me as so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I mean, that's always scary. They train us and they make us watch videos for, annual training on those scenarios of a deadly weapon in our facilities. And
Yeah.
yeah, and you got someone hiding under the bed though. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Um, so, here's the funny thing. You reference, you make a lot of pop culture or uh, music references in your book. And one of my things I thought was funny, I was like, I got to ask him, so what are you listening on your way to work these days? Because
I
I know there
love
was
that.
a part where you really described this. It's interesting because it was almost like your mental preparation for going to work. And I think you talked about those questions, but the other side of it is, what do you like, the distractions? What are you listening to that gets you thinking about not thinking about work?
Yeah. And so this year I'm listening to three things all year long. One of them is a book on our beloved Audible, on which you're a famous narrator. Uh, but this one is it's called The Science of Enlightenment by Shenzhen Yang. and it's a very profound book about meditation.
Okay.
And I'm going to listen to it once a month for 12 months. So I did for January, and I'm well into it for February. So I'm really absorbing this book, which is people have said really is a one of the best books written on meditation.
Okay.
So I'm really, really invested in the Science of Enlightenment by Shinzen Young. He's
Now,
a
how
Zen
long is this
master.
book, though?
Huh?
Oh, how long is the book?
12 hours.
Okay, so that's
Yeah.
doable. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I'm listening to two things music wise. I put together, do you know the Pogues?
The Polks. Okay.
P O
Not
G U E S?
po P. One more time.
Or Pogues,
I
Pogues.
don't. No, I don't know that one.
Shane McGowan was their lead singer and their songwriter. He died in early December. He's one of my favorite musicians of the 80s. So I put together a uh, musical list, song list of his stuff and then similar people. A Mexican singer songwriter named Natalia Lafourcade and a Irish singer named the Pogues are Irish. They were Irish punk. Um,
Oh, okay.
yeah, and then the Dropkick Murphys are kind of like them, but he's more Irish and more punk than them. um, but I put it's mixed. There's a singer named Lisa O'Neill. She sang at his funeral. Nick Cave, do you know him?
I don't know Nick Cave. No.
Oh, this could be the best benefit of this of our conversation. He's a really beautiful singer songwriter. Um,
Australian. It looks like a Australian musician songwriter. Okay.
you pulled him up that quickly.
Yeah, I'll look him up and now I got some. I got homework.
He's a singer songwriter of depth and rebellion. He's really beautiful. Um, so it's a mixture, a song mix. And then I also have Thelonious Monk. He's a jazz musician from the 50s. I
I
think
say
he
that
died.
sounds familiar. Felonious
Yeah,
Monk. Yeah.
yeah. So there's a 16-hour collection of his music.
Oh wow. Okay.
It's called the Complete Riverside Recordings. Are you pulling him up too?
I didn't. I was looking at you this time. Felonious. Yeah.
The Complete Riverside Recordings. And the thing about Thelonious, and the reason why I'm committing an entire year to listening to his music is that he combines two things: enormous depth with enormous playfulness.
Ah.
He's witty on the piano, and he's witty on his time signatures, and he's witty on his. He's humorously deep.
Yeah.
That's a great way to be as a musician or as a person. So I'm just kind of absorbing these influences this year. I think
Yeah.
all those people, the Pogues and Drake and Nick Cave, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
uh, they and Thelonious Monk and Shinzen Young and Lisa O'Neill all deserve a year's worth of attention.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
Well,
Mhm.
that's better than my approach. I listen to I listen to what my kids make me listen to in the car, which is 24/7 Taylor Swift these days.
That's outstanding. I don't know if it's better than your approach
Uh,
or not. Taylor Swift, that's beautiful.
and
Um,
and when I'm not listening to that, I consume audiobooks. Go figure, right? But I listen to mostly fantasy fiction stories, and
Beautiful.
that's kind of my escape. So yeah, not as not not as intentional as yours, but
Well, that's what happens when you get
intentional as
old.
in go with the flow.
That's
Yeah,
what happens when you get old, Nick. You start thinking about, I only have so many years left. I've got to invest in this stuff while I still can.
yeah. On to your other pop culture reference. You're a big baseball fan. Um,
Yes.
yeah, and so now I know a little bit more about Benjamin. And I thought that was pretty cool. That was, your connection with this character, Chaplain Richard's connection. There's a lot of things, but it really you found baseball and you found
Yeah.
the Brewers, right?
Right.
And some good banter there. Even when he was in states of delirium
Yes. Right.
with that. So very interesting. So how are you feeling about the Brewers these days? What's
I, l- I love this question. I read that last night when you sent the questions to me, and I was like, "How great that he'd ask that." That's really kind of you. It's kind of you to ask. Yeah. So we lost two important pitchers this year, and we also lost our manager, and yet I'm tremendously enthusiastic because they've got a whole bunch of young players who are really, really good, and they've got a new manager that I like as a person just a tremendous amount. So
yeah,
I'm going to have fun watching them this year. I think they'll win slightly fewer games this year than last, but because they lost Corbin Burns and Brandon Woodruff, but I'm really excited about them, and they
yeah,
have a young guy that could be a superstar that's on their team.
nice.
And
Yeah, you think
Jackson,
they'll make the playoffs?
sure, yes, I do.
Nice. Hey, that's
Yeah,
good.
I think they'll make the playoffs. They're not
Yeah,
going to beat the Braves or the Orioles, but in
yeah.
the World Series. But yeah,
Well, yeah, they've got so what spring training has got to be coming up. What end of this month, right?
yeah, they've started with the pitchers and the catchers have started,
Wow. So you get,
and the rest of
get to
them
see what
show up,
their.
and
Go ahead. Sorry.
the rest of them show up in a couple days.
Okay. So you get to see what their cloth looks like, how they're gelling, and
I feel
what's to
good
come.
about them. I feel
Yeah.
good about them. They're going to be fun. Put it that way.
Yeah.
They're young and exciting.
All
Who's
right.
your favorite baseball team?
You know, yeah, I thought about that when I was like, "Oh, I'm going to ask him this," but I don't follow baseball as much as him, so I don't have as much to say on the subject. But um, I I took on Seattle sports teams when I moved to
Yeah,
Seattle, but I was born in the Bay Area, so I grew up in the 80s, 90s, and for football that was Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, the San Francisco
yeah,
49ers. And for baseball, it was the Oakland A's, Mark McGuire, Ricky Henderson,
exactly.
Jose Canseco, all of those guys. And so that was my influence when I was got into sports and followed them in my youth. But then I kind of stopped doing sports altogether as I in adolescence to college. But then I picked up, the Seattle teams, so the Mariners. Um, they've had some better years, but I don't know. They're it's still a struggle for them. So I won't hold my breath. And now the A's, they're talking about moving to Utah.
Yeah,
So yeah. Um,
or Vegas.
is it Vegas or Utah? I can't remember. I thought I saw something about Salt Lake wanting to
Oh
go.
yeah, I think they flirted with them, but I think they're going to Vegas.
Yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, I haven't followed the A's for years, other than what's going on with them as a team in Oakland. But
Well, you're
um, the Mariners, though, they're fun. They're fun to root for. They're fun
good.
to watch. I've been to a few games, and but I don't get too heavily invested in them. So I have friends
Your
that.
your
Yeah,
team, the A's. I was in Boston. I lived in Boston for several years, and I was at Fenway Park one time, and I saw Mark McGuire and Jose Canseco hitting consecutive home runs.
yeah,
In the I was we were in the rain and we were drunk um, because we were able to take subway and train home. We didn't have to drive, so we could
yeah.
indulge. And I'll never forget watching those two home runs up in the lights with all the rain coming down as a memory that's really put in my mind.
Well, I'm sure there's lots of Fenway Park memories. I mean, that's any baseball fan's gotta love to go to Fenway someday and
Yes, and it was
see a
across the
good
street
game.
from a handful of rock and roll venues. So you could go to the
Oh,
game, leave the park and walk across the street and be in a concert. Yeah.
Nice.
We're off the
I
subject of this book.
No, and it's funny as I was going to bring us back a little bit, only because I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot the beginning where I went. I'm in. We'll make a little reel or something like this for later on, but um, Heart Like a Bonfire. Do you want people to read the book to know where you get that from, or can you tell us a little bit about Heart Like a Bonfire?
Yeah, I can go into it. I think I made a couple references to it, but uh, how do I describe it? Uh, my spiritual life is about there's 3 layers of life. You can cut it up any way that you want and find 15 layers if you want to. But I see it as being there's the world that we all live in here, the kind of consensus trance world that you and I are talking in right now, everyday
Hmm.
world. And then there's beneath that is the next layer, dreams, intuitions, subtle energies. Um, what else would be down there? Memories, urges, hidden desires, uh, that world.
Yeah.
And then, and that's where a lot of spirituality and psychotherapy goes to. But beneath that is source, um, the nature of nature. Uh, uh, some people call it God.
Hmm.
I'm comfortable with that, but I don't have to call it that.
Right.
Uh, Also, is the other one uh, the love intelligence of the universe. You could call it universe with a capital U. All drilling down to the core reality, which, in my opinion, is a heart like a bonfire. That's um, you had the Big Bang, you have the big unfolding, you have the big blossoming of the universe,
Hmm.
and it's evolved so far that now we've got human beings asking what the nature of the universe is.
Yeah.
Um, and it's all along as this universe has unfolded, we've come to this planet where love is such a big thing. Mother and a child, patients and their families, staff and staff, um, pets and their owners, etc. Pets and pets.
Right.
There's love, and it's at the core of the universe, and it's a heart like a bonfire.
Yeah.
That's
No, it's really pretty. I liked it. It stuck out to me, and um, I remember it was interesting because we ran into an issue with the end of the production of finishing it for Audible for ACX, the platform which these are all processed through, and the issue was that we had to do the cover and
yeah,
the image that you had for your cover, this guy right here,
yeah,
was kind of mushed onto whatever Amazon does with it, right, on their regular platform. Um, and yet we couldn't use that. So um, we had asked one of my friends to see if he can do his magic with Photoshop and all that to make a graphic for us to put on the audiobook version. And it really had me going back to your in the book, your description of Heart Like a Bonfire, and again this imagery that you're creating, this gosh, the concept, way of life, all of those things that you just said, and it was really fascinating to me, and it was interesting to see that with somebody else just taking the words and terms that was not invested with, like you and I, with reading this book or with promoting or writing the book, and to produce. Let me see if I can find it here. The image. I thought I saved it somewhere, but
he
um,
came up with a beautiful cover.
yeah,
Eric
and,
did, your friend Eric.
yeah, Eric. And so what I thought was just fascinating was this picture of it, which really depicted a heart shape in a fire with logs and sort of that thing. And then today, or maybe it was last night when you shared the event to your page, and I was looking at your page and I noticed that you had a an older image, and at some point there was a picture of a crumpled piece of paper, and on it was a drawing, crayon pencil, of a fire and a heart. And do you recall that on your page?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And
That's my
so go ahead. Tell me
that's
about
my
that.
granddaughter's
Yeah.
drawing of a heart like a bonfire at night.
Right. And I just thought that was so cool because I didn't see your community page for the book, and for your blogs and everything that you've been doing. And when I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, that's funny because when she hears that phrase and that term, she put together this drawing, and then somebody else who, half across the US hears the word, puts together a cover for the audiobook version, and I would swear that he looked at that. You know what I mean? It
Yes,
was just
you're
so
so
cool.
right. It's uncanny, the similarity.
Yeah. So anyway, I thought that was pretty neat, and
It is,
I thought it was important
really.
just to really talk about what "Heart Like a Bonfire" means to you. What made you come up with that? Where does that fit into all?
I commune with the heart with a bonfire every night for an hour.
Yeah.
That's the meditation,
Hmm.
and that's also what the answer to your question of how you do it, how you don't burn out. It's That's the main thing.
Yeah.
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 Well,
Well,
Eric and Leilani.
yeah, Eric and Leilani, they two minds think alike. She's
Great.
your future marketing extraordinaire.
That's it.
Yeah, that's who I go to for all my marketing advice. Is my friend that similar
Absolutely.
mind. So, well, on that, what's as we sort of wrap up this, we made it past 45 minutes. We made it past an hour.
Yeah.
Look at that. Um, what's next for John Hughes, the chaplain, John Hughes, the author? Where do you go from here?
I'm going to retire again this year at some point.
Yeah.
No hurry, but I'm going to do that. Um, and uh, two things. We are. I'm looking into writing another book, but I'm kind of I'm letting the book come to me organically. What it's going to be. I'm
Hmm.
writing sort of a funny book called "A Thousand Ways to Be Ghastly." Um, and I think that might be a fun book. I'm kind of want to. I don't want to just have a thousand ideas jumbled. I want to
Hmm.
have it be sort of themes that grow, so that the reader puts it down and going, "Oh, he wasn't just coming up with a list." Um, there sort of has a anti-fascist
Hmm.
thing, and it also kind of points the way to alternatives. So that's one book, and then I think about climate change quite a bit. Heard somebody, her name is Kate Rayworth, she's out of Oxford, say it's all hands on deck for climate change, but we all don't want to stand at the same point on the deck.
Right.
We want to be all doing different tasks on board the ship. So I'm kind of thinking about what my task is
Yeah.
and what my contribution is. Um, is cultural rather than social, meaning it has to do with our shared meanings as opposed to actually trying to impact how the tax structure is. Somebody else
Right.
can work on that.
Yeah.
That's I'm thinking about that, and Mary and I we're exploring
Oh, there you go.
cooking better.
Yeah.
Yeah, she really is doing that, and I'm along for the ride. But it's fun. We're doing it together. Uh,
reap
yeah,
reap the health benefits of that, right?
exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Well, yeah, I just want to say what an honor it is to work with you. I there are there's a lot of horror stories. I mean, you mentioned just the four candidates that you had to sort through, but there's a lot of horror stories from the narrator side of books that are sadly derived by AI.
Oh,
And
wow.
there are people who will fraudulently list copy of text or stories to try to produce audiobook versions to until they get caught and hopefully make money until they do. So there's a lot of that going on. And so there is a great bit to sort through or to navigate for
Yeah.
narrators right now with in addition to competition with AI. I know that authors have choices now to enlist AI. So I just want to say what an honor it is to work with a truly genuine and good author. Um, that it's the best of experiences. Aside from all that, there are authors who you send them everything and they want you to pick up and fix this line or this word or this here and take the breath out before this line. And
Oh my God.
there was certainly a bit of exploratory freedom that you allowed, and that just is I can't thank you enough for being such a great partner to work with. So
Oh, that's excellent. That's excellent. And that's how I feel about you. Easy, easy, easy. You set this whole thing up here. I wouldn't know how to do this if you paid me.
well, I think it's learning with the times. How do we learn to brand, whether I like it or not? Trust me, I don't like to see myself on YouTube, and now it's out there for the masses to consume and to critique and judge. But I'll just have to shut that noise out.
Critique and judge.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. All
Have to
right. Well,
turn off the noise from all the haters, right?
that's
Um,
right. Just cuddle up with your wife and daughters.
Definitely. Well, I wish you all the luck with retirement. That's important, first of all, and with writing. I think I looked at your Facebook page, your Heart Like a Bonfire page, and yeah, I see that you've done blog work. I see that you have a lot to say and a lot to write about that people would enjoy hearing or reading. So I wish you the best and keep at that. I think it's awesome, and I'll keep following along your journey as well. So
Cool. Cool.
yeah,
Thanks. I'll cheer for the Mariners on your behalf.
ah, don't worry about it. It's okay. All right. Well, anybody that's tuning in, whether it's live today, please give the page a like. If you want to see more of this in the future, subscribe. Do all those things that they tell you to do on YouTube channels, just so that I can bump those algorithms. They like it when you do that. So, and it gets John and I more exposure on this project and Heart Like a Bonfire. Um, so check it out. I'll put links down below for John's Facebook group, for the Amazon link, where you can get it in paperback format, the Kindle ebook, or of course the audio version through Audible. So those will all be linked in the chat. Thank you all for watching. Until next time, thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you.